think our chances are of contacting the Enterprise?
Under present conditions, extremely poor.
Then you don't think they'll find us?
We may be here for a very long time, Doctor.
On the way to a planet with some desperately needed medical supplies, the Enterprise makes a stop to make observations of a rare space anomaly. Spock has been put in charge of an away team that is taking a shuttle to observe the event. Overseeing the delivery of the medication is Galactic High Commissioner Ferris, who thinks that Kirk should keep going and get to the planet that needs the meds, and honestly, I'm with him. I think people should take diseases seriously and follow health guidelines and wear their fucking masks in public. It's not that hard, Karen! As one would expect, the Galileo is pulled off course and loses contact with the Enterprise. The radiation from the quasar renders the Enterprise's sensors useless, which means the members of the Galileo are lost. As luck would have it, there just so happens to be an M-class planet inside the quasar, meaning that the planet has an atmosphere capable of sustaining humanoid life. The Galileo crashes on that planet and no one is seriously hurt. Bones, can you sit like a human, please? The Enterprise orbits the planet in hopes of finding the Galileo, despite their lack of sensors, and Jim tells Ferris that he doesn't intend to leave without finding the missing crew until the last possible minute, meaning they have 2 days to locate the shuttle. Down on the planet, the crew is at work trying to repair the shuttle. Bones says to Spock that this is his chance to be in command for once, and Spock says that he is neutral to the idea of command. Scotty says that the shuttle will have to lose a significant amount of weight to be able to take off, and Spock claims that he might have to choose 3 crew members to stay behind on the planet. Nobody is happy about this. Meanwhile, Gaetano and Latimer are patrolling the vicinity and get attacked by something. Latimer takes a spear to the back. Owie. When Spock and Lieutenant Boma come to investigate the dead body, Spock acts clinical and unfeeling, earning Boma and Gaetano's scorn. Even without Latimer's weight and the crew dumping some extra items, the Galileo is still 150 pounds overweight. That's okay, Galileo. So am I.
I can't believe you're serious about leaving someone behind.
Bones, have you met Spock? He's not much of a joker, or a smoker, or even a midnight toker. The crew want to have a funeral service for Latimer, but Spock sees it as a waste of time. Everyone is getting fed up with Spock. Meanwhile, a pipeline busts and the Galileo loses its fuel. Outside, the crew senses the hostiles nearby and wants to attack them for killing Latimer, but Spock orders them to shoot only to frighten, not to kill, claiming that murder should be avoided at all costs, even when the other party is an enemy. The interesting contradiction that Spock cares about preserving life but can't be bothered about honoring the dead. I don't think it's that he doesn't care that Latimer died, just that he has other priorities at the moment, like repairing the shuttle and getting the crew back to the Enterprise safely. Spock and Boma return to the shuttle, leaving Gaetano to stand guard alone. Well, this seems like a good idea. Scotty has devised a solution to repair the missing fuel. He believes he can convert the energy from the phasers into a substitute fuel source. Back on the Enterprise, Jim has been hard at work trying to find the Galileo via sending out shuttles to manually search the planet's surface, since the ship's sensors and transporters are still on the fritz. They have less than 24 hours to find the missing crew. Boy, it must be hard for Shatner not being the focus of this episode. Gaetano is attacked by one of the hostiles, and I'm trying not to laugh at this ridiculous-looking costume. Anyway. The rare episode where the red shirts are completely safe and the yellow shirts are the ones who get picked off like flies. Spock finds Gaetano's body and Bones criticizes Spock's logic for not anticipating that the hostiles would react in anger rather than fear like he predicted. The hostiles start attacking the shuttle from the outside. Spock is at a loss as to how his logic could have failed him while everyone else is like, "You suck, Spock." Spock comes up with the idea to electrify the exterior of the shuttle to drive the hostiles off. It seems to work for the moment, and Spock orders the crew to dispose of Gaetano's body to expel the last of the extra weight on the Galileo. Boma demands he gets a proper burial, and Spock reluctantly allows it, believing it to be a bad idea should the hostiles come back, now that they don't have weapons to defend themselves. On the Enterprise, a landing party returns unsuccessful and reports about the hostiles, who killed one of them on the trip. It seems unlikely that Spock's team could still be alive, and Ferris reminds Jim that they're out of time. Jim reluctantly agrees to call off the search and leave the planet. Before they leave orbit, however, Jim orders sensors to be pointed behind the ship, just in case. Sure enough, while they are giving the dead their proper burial, Spock, Bones, and Boma are attacked by the hostiles once more. Spock gets pinned by a falling rock and orders the other two to leave him behind. Bones and Boma go back for him regardless. The Galileo gets off the ground and into space. Spock chastises the men for going back for him, saying they may have missed their opportunity for rescue. Scotty predicts enough fuel for one orbit around the planet before they crash back onto the surface. Spock tries to radio the Enterprise to no avail. Then, on a whim, he does something illogical. Spock jettisons their precious fuel and ignites it, causing a trail to appear behind them, like an emergency flare. Luckily, it's just enough to attract the attention of the Enterprise. Jim turns around and rescues the Galileo just before it burns up on re-entry. Back on the ship, Jim and Bones gently tease Spock about having gone against logic and taking a risk like burning up the fuel to get the Enterprise's attention. Spock maintains that his decision was purely logical.
You're not going to admit that for the first time in your life, you committed a purely human, emotional act?
No, sir.
Mr. Spock, you're a stubborn man.
Yes, sir.
It's rare that a Star Trek episode focuses so heavily on one character who isn't Kirk. Spock is such an interesting and complex character. His non-human humanity so often works as a mirror for our own humanity. Spock is put in charge and his alienness puts everyone off. I don't think that anything he said or did was wrong in any way, but his refusal to show sympathy or kindness to his crew drives a wedge between them. And don't tell me he can't show those feelings because he's a Vulcan, because he's done so in the past and will do in the future. No, I think it's something different altogether. I think Spock is so concerned with doing everything right that it's giving him tunnel vision. Often when we're so tense and single-minded about something, it actually widens the margin for error. That's why Spock screws up with the hostiles. It's only until he unclenches and goes against his rigid nature that he succeeds. In short, Spock is stressed out. In Star Trek, the balance between instinct and logic is often expressed as human versus Vulcan, and that conflict is reflected in Spock's two heritages. There's no reason why an individual can't use both instinct and reason in decision-making. Kirk is a perfect example of that, and that's why he makes for such a good leader. Spock says he has no desire for command because he knows it requires one to trust both their head and their heart, and Spock is comfortable with just trusting his head. One of Star Trek's main philosophies is humanism. One of the tenets of humanism is that humans tend toward their better selves, that we are driven to improve ourselves, and that we have an instinct to do good. Philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau once said of humanity, people in their natural state are basically good. But then again, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a leftist hippie freaking vegan cultural Marxist beta soy boy who doesn't even lift, so why listen to him? Bones and the others argue about Spock leaving someone behind. Spock's response is,
It is more rational to sacrifice one life than 6, Doctor.
Or in other words, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. It's a totally rational way of thinking, but it's not the human way. The crew of the Galileo refuse to leave Spock behind, even when it puts them all in danger because they're a team. In this case, the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And in a parallel scenario, Kirk refuses to leave his crew behind when he knows he can help them. Sometimes we have to put others before ourselves. That may mean something as hard as refusing to abandon someone on a planet, or something as simple as wearing a face mask to the grocery store. The only way communities can thrive is if we help and support each other, plain and simple. Or, as a hardcore spinal surgeon with daddy issues once wisely said,
But if we can't live together, we're gonna die alone.